What's going on, everybody? It's Traders Gold FX. This is a new video. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I'm going to teach you how you might be doing supply and demand strategy wrong. Okay. So basically, I'm just going to start out real quick. I ain't going to hold you guys too long. But this video is basically going to help you understand how to trade supply and demand correctly. Some people just trade it off of a break and retest zone. All right. So sometimes you'll see something like this, right? And the market will come back and retest this area, right? Now, obviously, some people automatically believe that this is a strong level demand zone, right? I think that I stated this before in my video that sometimes the market does not hold and it will just come and break down to the low, correct? Well, I really want to help you understand that just because you see a level that has been respected does not mean that that's a strong demand zone, okay? The strongest demand zones that you should be trading are usually where the banks usually probably put their orders in, along with extra confluences and confirmations, right? So like a break of structure is definitely obvious that you know the market is going in line with the trend. As long as this is an uptrend is what I'm talking about, it's definitely going to help you out in the future, okay? So our demand zones that we usually trade is not here, okay? That's for what you call break and retest people, okay? So for people who see this as demand, that's totally fine. But when people say support, it was obvious support, it was obvious resistance area, now support, you know, that definitely aligns with people who are trading break and retest support and resistance, right? But I'm going to show you something very powerful that you need to understand. When markets come down with a pullback, right? A lot of times you will see on the uptrend, right? You will see a bearish candle and immediate engulfing bullish candle. Okay. So anytime that happens, sometimes we call those order blocks, right? In other words, that it is a level of strong demand, because that's usually order block is where, you know, the banks will place their orders and the market will continue to drive up the value, right? So this is where it usually tends to happen. But the first thing that we need to see first is we need to see a break of structure. Okay. So at this high, we are going to call this break of structure. Okay. That is our break of structure. The break of structure is very important because you can't just, some people would literally, don't know what's wrong here. Oh, some people would literally just trade any, what is going on here? Okay. I do not know what's going on here. Hold on for a second, people. Let me refresh this. All right. So some people would just trade any break of structure area. Move this a little bit. And you don't necessarily just want to just look at any particular break of structure area, okay? So for example, like people will say, oh, you know, the market is in a downtrend, but because I see something like this, the demand level is right here. All right. Now that is a demand level, but it's probably not the best demand level. You want to look for the demand levels that are pretty strong. All right. So once you break this area of the high, you want to look for a demand level that's usually usually a strong level of demand, correct? And then what you want to do is you want to continue to look for the nearest area that's close, the most recent demand level that will reject from that level. Okay, so 9 times out of 10, you have the market come down here and respect this level. All right, so what are we going to call this? We're going to call this demand. All right, why do we call it demand zone? It's because, and I'm going to give you a clean example on the charts as well. But why do we call this demand level? Because it has a gap that it needs to fill. Okay. So also within this area, you'll see a what? A gap that needs to be filled. Okay. So there's a gap that needs to be filled. So once that gap is filled, and then you see a rejection and everything. Once, let's just say this was the previous bearish candle, you want the market to come back, break through that previous area, then you will enter. All right, you'll enter right here and put your stop loss there, and you can ride it up to any of those highs. All right, so you can ride it up to this high right here. Don't know what's going on with that. or this high right here, okay? And that's up to you, right? And then 9 times out of 10, the market will for sure just crash on up. It's the same thing with supply area, okay? So let me just give you a pure example, okay? So here's AU. And we've been looking at AU. AU has been on a very heavily bullish trend. It did come back with a pullback on Thursday. And I can actually tell you that anytime that happens, you can definitely trade supply. Because remember, we're not trading just the overall week. We are trading the trend on that day. Okay, so this was the trend on Friday, and I profited off of this. Okay, so once we all know that on a 1 hour time frame, the market is bulling. All right, it's bulling up, and we want to stay with the trend. Okay, so we go to the 5-minute time frame. All right, now picture this, guys. People would literally think that this is just simply demand. All right, this is not. This is demand zone, but it's not where you want to buy. Okay, you don't want to buy somewhere where it's just consolidating or ranging. You want to buy somewhere where it's obviously breaking structure and coming back to fill that gap before taking back off. Okay, so for example, Friday, I had a demand level, but let me go ahead and do a replay and I'll show you where I got in at. Okay, all right, so currently at the time on a Friday, the market was right here. All right, it was right here. And then what has taken place is the market began to go up. Now it broke structure that I wanted it to break, which is here. So let's name this break of structure. All right, so we name this break of structure. All right, and so because it's on an uptrend and it's a break of structure we're looking at, now we look for our most recent demand. Our demand level, guys, is not going to be here. It's not going to be here because what can happen is the market can come right back down and go to the areas of the gaps it needs to fill. See, a lot of people misstep that. They think that, oh, structure is broken, so it's going to come back, retest that structure, and just go up. Can it? Absolutely, it can. But the most effective way of trading supply and demand is where the banks got in at, which is right here. What do we see? We see a bearish and immediate bullish candle along with 3 white soldiers continuously heading up. 3 white soldiers is basically when 3 bold candles keep going. That's usually a sign that's going to keep going. So what do? This is our demand and our gaps. All right. So we can put demand zone. All right. And our gaps. All right. So the market is going to have to come and fill this gap. Now, put it, really right here is where I put it, where the bear candle is. So what you want it to do is you want the market, all right, to come back to fill that gap to go back up. Now, what happened in this trade, and I'm going to tell you what happened in this trade, is anytime you see the market pass these zones right here, you can automatically close out and get in again. Close half your position if you want to and get in again. All right. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. And I'm going to show you exactly how I won in this trade and how I closed early on the first time I got in the second time, and I was able to profit. Okay. All right. So you see the break of structure. Now people are chasing this candle, right? People are just chasing. They're chasing like, oh, I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy. They put the stop loss below the latest low previous candle. And guess what happens? The market starts coming back. And then what happens? It stops them out right there. And I'm telling you guys, if you just look at this demand zone, I'm telling you, this is the way to do it. I'm trying to tell you. I had 6 wins in a row on this strategy. All right. Just saying. So the market comes back down. This is the rejection happening. The market pulls back up. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. I sent it out into the group. And I was like, I'm in on this one. And I actually have my stop loss right here. Now, and I have my TP right here. Now, what I'm telling you guys is when the market started coming back like this is when you have to make your decision. You can actually say, you know what, let me go ahead and pull out because it's breaking this previous candle. And if it starts breaking that previous candle, which it did right here, I literally got out right here, which is, 5% of that. I said, forget it. I'm going to go ahead and take a, 0.5% loss. And cut my losses early, right? But I was like, maybe it can go down and maybe create the supply, right? Maybe this can turn to supply, but it actually didn't. What tended to happen is the market just came down, got some liquidity, right? And came back up. Now, this is where I say the this was so valid. I was at work at the time. So I went back and I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, this is actually breaking through. And then I was like, if it breaks through here, I'm gonna go ahead and get it. I didn't have time to send it out to the group. So I just went ahead and just took the trade. So once it breaks this area, you see how it closed back in and then it broke this area, you can get in again. This is your way of trading supply and demand. And then boom, and stop loss right here was my stop loss, and it just kept riding. Okay, so that's your TP. I went for 1-to-1 R. I was originally going to go for a 1-to-2, and of course, it ended up hitting TP right there. So I'm giving you this clear example on how to really trade supply and demand. Number one, the reason why people fail at supply and demand is because they think that any level of demand is just demand. You have to have this number one thing: break of structure. Wait for structure to be broken. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you have to trade this way, have to trade that way. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you the way I see supply and demand and the way it has been so effective for me. If you really, really, really want to trade this strategy, the number one thing is waiting for a break of structure. Okay. For example, I'm going to clear this out. This is another example. All right. You see break of structure right here, right? See break of structure right here, for example. And let's just say you was just counter trending this, right? Go ahead and do this. Let's see you was counter trending this. All right. And this was your break of structure. All right. You see how the market broke structure on this area, even though it was an uptrend. Let's just say you say, okay, I see a reversal coming, and it's during early London session. Well, this would be your gap. This would be your area of gap. Okay, that's where the banks got in. All right. You see how I tapped into that level? That's where you could have got in. Now let's just say you missed it. All right. And see how it taps into the zone. All right. Boom. Now it's breaking that previous candle. You short it, aim for a 1-to-1. Let's see if it happens. Not sure if it happens. I can't remember what happens. All right. That's 8 pip stop loss. And then your TP hit. So this is why it's so crucial that number one, you have to understand that break of structure must come first. Number two, you have to let the market come back to fill the gap. Just like here, it filled the gap. All right. This was your gap after that break of structure. Okay. So after break of structure, it came to fill that gap in your zone. And then it came down to where liquidity was. All right. This is where liquidity is. Now, I'm telling you this, I do not trade liquidity as my main bread and butter. I don't really pay attention a lot to liquidity. I just say, sometimes I'm like, maybe liquidity is here, maybe liquidity is there. And based off liquidity, that's where I usually put my take profit at. Okay. I don't just, and sometimes I just aim for 1-on-1. I don't really pay attention to liquidity, but I'm just saying, it will help if you understand liquidity, right? Because we all don't know where liquidity is 100%, but we do know is in the market, and we can see like various, blank areas of highs and lows where liquidity could rely. So if you want to add that to your strategy, that will definitely help. So ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you, number one, you have to wait for a break of structure. Okay. You can't just look at anything, right? You can't just look at this and just say, oh, this is demand, right? You can't. You have to look at where the market, what the trend is. And then once the market decides to bull up like this, you see how it bulled up right there in a broke structure. That's when you want to look for your demand area. And from after it pushes up, which would have been here, which the market never came back, for it to come back to tap into your zone to go right back up. Okay. So that's how you trade supply and demand. And I'm telling you, please do not trade. Don't just trade anything. Please don't trade anything. A lot of people are just looking for ways to, they'll just look at any area, but they're not waiting for any confirmation. You have to have a break of structure, okay? And then last and finally, after the gap has been filled and then starts rejecting, once it breaks the previous candle, then you can go ahead and enter. Just aim for a 1-on-1. It doesn't matter what the structure is, or just aim for the next low, or if you're buying for the next high. I hope this video was very helpful. I see you guys next week, or this week, of course, because it's Sunday. And also I have a podcast episode that's coming out next Friday. I'm launching my first podcast called Trader Glow FX Podcast. So I hope this podcast will be very helpful for you as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, and you guys all take care. Thank you.